small issue, and probably Anton is the best one to answer that. But, when you find synthetic cannabinoids in herbal and THC and so on, what happens is that synthetic cannabinoids have a much more affinity for the typical CB1 and CB2 receptor. But they are much more receptive where THC can bind. One of those receptors, I'm sorry about this technical approach, but is the serotonergic receptors. What does it? That means that THC might bind to those ones, raising some episodes of hallucinations and other psychotic events, which means that combining these two things, much more people are getting psychosis, and from what, like Danielle said, it's quite an harmful plant. It depends also on the dose. You are getting much more people getting help and in need of help. So beside that, there is another issue, is the amount of THC that plants nowadays are getting. And we are finding 20%, 25%, and sometimes a little bit more of THC, which also means that THC is not only bind to the CB1, CB2, and the three other ones, but also to the serotonin receptors. And people are getting psychosis just because of that. So there is a couple of other issues that I would like you to comment about these two main problems. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope I can give you a good comment for that. Of course, that is a problem that is the high potency THC products are, of course, something that has its own kind of sector of attention that needs to be put to it. What we have seen, it's just case studies that we've had. We've had people with psychosis, people with psychosis on THC, but people with psychosis on synthetic cannabinoids. Combination of that, as we always say, the combination of any psychoactive substance with another one has the potential for interactions and even more adverse reactions, which is a problem. What I'm actually quite grateful for this comment, because what we do in drug checking and harm reduction is that we can't cover everything. So we seek for or monitor which is the most potentially harmful development for public health at the moment, and we try to address this, knowing that pharmacology and toxicology of new psychoactive substances is often unknown, but we see the effects of it. So once we see the receptors and we see what they actually do, we can give that information. But before that, we can just react to a phenomenon that we see. So this is the cat and mouse play that everyone, all of us have, that we have, that we're like usually one step behind, but which is drug checking has, through the connections to the users, the interactions with the users, also the connections with emergency wards and psychiatric units. We have the possibility to see the symptoms and find the reason for that. And of course, science comes then and explains everything. But with drug checking, we can connect, hopefully, the symptoms to the source of it, and we can warn. And this is, I think, this is the main resource, and that's why I'm grateful that you brought that point up. Thank you.
Thank you, Anton. I don't know if anyone, Carsten, has a question. I think probably it will have to be the last, because then we'll go to the next session. But let's see how we are in terms of time, and then eventually we might be able to participate further a little bit before the coffee break.
Thank you, Anna. I just want to highlight another point. We had so much focus on prevention on death, and what I also think that's not the main focus of drug checking. The main focus of drug checking is that we have prevention tools. We have counseling talks with the target group, and with the discussion about the risks of consuming, we reduce the consumption in the target group as whole. So that's a main point which we have to keep in mind. That's a very good point, and maybe Anton or Mireia can tell more on that point than me from the German part, though. Maybe you can highlight this a little bit more.
Yes, this was exactly what I was trying to explain with these drop-in centers, that people services centers to know what is inside their drugs, but that for our services, this is a way to contact with these people. This is a way to open the conversation about drugs and to talk about not only this specific sample, that yes, we are beginning from this, but also to talk about how they are using these substances, how they can manage, how they can learn from themselves, also taking under consideration that people who are taking drugs are still under this stigma, and then they don't feel good for taking drugs. And some people are declaring like, yeah, I know that if I'm taking drugs, I'm doing nothing well, so then never mind how I'm doing this. And this is what we are trying to change to first, for example, in energy control, which is the project that I'm working with in Spain. We were developing a specific questionnaire during the pandemic situation to talk about the specific things of every substance. So if you are going to analyze ecstasy, we will talk about different things that if you are going to analyze cocaine, with the idea to help people to express what are the benefits of the use of these substances when they are using, because we need to think that with people who are taking drugs recreationally, they are taking drugs because they like it, because they feel pleasure. But of course, also, they can feel other kind of things. So acknowledging this pleasure is where we are opening these conversations to talk also about the risk of the use of these substances and how they can manage this risk and how they can find this way to still enjoy the use of the substances, going out together, to take care of their friends, to grow, to self-experiment and also to self-grow, because finally the use of drugs can also help you to understand several things, but it's very important that you are always putting in the framework that you need to put it, and that also you can have experts or people who you can talk about the use of these drugs, because normally when you are using these drugs under the stigma that we are facing, the openness to talk about drugs, people are not going to the doctor and explain about their use of drugs or what they concern about drugs. So these kind of drug checking services are trying to reach this objective, trying to be a place to talk openly about drugs and to sort out and figure out how they can use these drugs to reduce the risks that are related with.
Thank you. I think we need to finish the session, but I'm just going to say something really quick about the Cosmic Care experience, just to add on that. We have different data, whether from our drop-in center and also from the Boom Festival, besides this paper that Mireia so generally presented that we've just published. We have another one submitting, comparing, where we had a comparison between people that use the drug checking service, between testers, let's call it like that, and non-testers. At the Boom Festival, so it's all people that tend to have a higher level of drug use than the general population. But we understood two very interesting things, that drug checkers tend to use more drugs than people that don't use the drug checking service, but also at the same time, they implement a lot more protective behaviors than people that don't use the drug checking service. So although you could say that eventually they engage in riskier behaviors because they do more drugs, they're also much more informed and much more proactive, taking care of their health than other people that use drugs. And this comparison has to do a lot with this interaction, with searching for information, with having a space where they can discuss this, with having access to objective information about the products that they intend to use. So when we look, for example, at bad experiences with drugs, and we also did a qualitative study on this, we see that people didn't have that many bad experiences, even though they use more drugs than the general population, and it's many times related with this, with preparing and knowing what's happening. And for example, at our drop-in center, 80% of the people that reach us, although they are quite young, they're also experienced users in the sense that they're, let's call it drug careers if we want, has started for a while, but this is the first social and health services that they reach to speak about their drug use. Like Mireia was saying, they're not going to their family doctors to speak about this. They speak with their friends. They look information on the internet, which can be good and can be bad. So sometimes we're the first door that they have to actually full-on speak about their drug experience, and that makes a lot of difference when you want to be careful with your health, with your well-being, and a more holistic way of seeing things. So I think it's very important what you highlighted, and thank you, Carsten, for highlighting that we're far beyond monitoring or something else service. We work for people that use drugs, and that's the main objective. So we're running a little bit late, as it was to be expected. So we're going straight to the next session with Juan Matias from the MCDDA and Dr. Mário Dias from the EML and also from Instituto de Ciências Psicológicas e Forense Cegas Muniz, que são nossos parceiros e a quem agradecemos muito o trabalho que têm feito connosco e a ajuda preciosa que têm sido. E depois fazíamos então um coffee break, se vocês aguentarem mais um bocadinho, e muito obrigado por estarem aqui.
Olá, tudo bem? Agora já tenho som. Posso? Ok.
Está-me a ouvir, Mário? Consegue-me ouvir?
Estou a ouvi-la.
Perfeito.
Não tenho imagem, mas estou a ouvi-la.
Nós, pronto, vamos então dar aqui início à segunda sessão. So we're gonna start with Juan Matias. Juan Matias is an epidemiologist. He's graduated from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and in 2004 he joined the European Monitoring Center.
Eu estou a ouvir um som muito distorcido.
Está a ouvir muito, se calhar é o microfone. Não sei se será mais fácil talvez desligar o seu som enquanto eu estou a falar, não é? O microfone talvez seja mais simples. Portanto, estava a dizer que o João has joined the EMCDDA in 2004, and he works in the public health unit as a scientific analyst on drug use, responsible for the epidemiological indicator, prevalence and patterns of drug use. He has also worked in the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime as an analyst on drug markets, and he generously agreed to be here today to talk about these monitoring systems and how drug checking fits within the data that the EMCDDA is collecting. Thank you, João, for your presence.
Thanks, Danielle, Helena, and Cosmic Air for the invitation and the event, organizing this event on drug checking. I think I will help you with timekeeping because I didn't prepare a presentation, but my mind is a bit chaotic, so I had to structure a bit. So I have some notes, and also because my memory is not the same as before. So I'm going to talk just briefly on how drug checking is a monitoring tool for us at the EU Drugs Agency. My talk will be based on 4 C's. So the first C is context. Why only now, or very recently, drug checking became a monitoring tool for us. In the last 2-3 decades, in Europe and the world, the situation of patterns of drug use and drug markets changed quite a lot. We still have, and probably will always have, big gaps in our knowledge. And the situation is always changing because of the globalized drug markets, because of the increasing markets being online and people getting access to drugs in a different way. So all of those things putting together in a pot have changed a lot the way we have to see the world, but also the way we have, how we have to work. The constant appearance of new psychoactive substances, and Anton was correct, it's around 1,000 now that we monitor in our early warning system. At the moment, we have around 50 to 60 new substances appearing on the the European drug market. So all this played a huge role in the way we need to see what we do. And we need to reflect a bit if the traditional classic monitoring tools, and I'm referring to surveys, treatment registries on mortality, if they are still fit for purpose. Because when our monitoring system was developed 2 decades ago, was around mostly a huge epidemic with heroin, with injecting drug use, and so we probably need to work, and that's what we are doing, to change a bit the way we collect data. And so this is where drug checking became part of our monitoring toolkit, as we call a complementary method, together with other data tools like wastewater analysis. We also developed a network with European hospitals that give us data on emergency cases because of drug use, but also we developed another project on analyzing the residues in used syringes and needles to see which drugs have been used by those who inject. So all of this together, and going back to the title of this session, the importance of city-level data. We usually only have data at national level, but with these complementary methods like drug checking, it allows us to have a bit more granularity in the data and the information we get. Second C, cooperation, and Mireille already mentioned before, we have started a cooperation with the drug checking European network, TEDI, quite some years ago, 6 years ago. I think it has been quite important for us, but also for the network. We have tried to automatize procedures in terms of data collection, of how the European drug checking services report also data to a common European database. We are working at the moment in an online platform for that data to be easier submitted on a yearly basis. Why now? I think also because our needs of information are very different at the moment, and drug checking is filling a huge gap that we did not have before. 3 points. So my boss just arrived, so now I need to be careful. 3 main reasons why drug checking is so important for us. First of all, it's still because it's an intervention. You mentioned before, it's a harm reduction, risk reduction intervention, and it's key for us. Second, because it allows us to monitor the drug market, to monitor the drug market, so which substances are available. And third, it's a key component of our European early warning system. So it's one of the key sources that detects, sometimes for the first time, new substances on the market. Third C, coherence. I think our cooperation with the TEDI network has helped also to share best practices between the different services. Today is a good example. It has helped to organize expert meetings around not only the data, but also in terms of risk communication, how should we communicate risk, and on that, hopefully, very, very soon we are going to publish together with TEDI a report on how to communicate risk around drug checking information. And I think we are in a privileged position also to help other countries that do not have yet drug checking services, that do not have yet this monitoring tool. And I think in Europe, we are really in a privileged position. Last point here, I think it will also help us be better prepared for possible emerging threats in the future if potent substances show up in the market. So I think it's also key to have capacity building between the different services, and in case new services and new cities want to have this service, that we have a network that can help establishing those. Last C, and last but not least, collaboration. And this is a collaboration request, and I'm looking at Danielle, and it's also why I was referring to drug checking, not only as an intervention monitoring tool, but as an opportunity. Very recently, we have started a project in the MCDA to look at hair testing and combining it with an application of a web survey. Why did we decide to do this? You mentioned before, sometimes those who use drugs are not aware of what they are using. Also, sometimes those who sell are also not aware of what they are selling. The monitoring of new psychoactive substance use, it's a huge challenge still for us at the moment. Although they have been with us in the markets for more than 10 years, it's very, very difficult to apply surveys to ask about the patterns of drug use for those specific substances. So this is one of the reasons why we also started this project. And for the moment, we will have data collection in Italy, Portugal, and France, and hopefully Ireland as well. We have worked on a common protocol. We are not reinventing the wheel because some work has been done in the US before. We have already the ethical approval from the University of Turin for the international study, and a bit different than what we saw with drug checking that started as an intervention and then only after a bit became a monitoring tool. We started this project as a monitoring tool, and slowly we want to move. I think it's because of the mic is on. We want slowly to move it as an intervention as well. So by combining hair sample testing and with a web survey, we will validate the self-reported data, so what people think they used, and at the same time we want to give back something to the participants of these studies, and we want to report back the results of the chemical analysis. And at the same time that we will report the results of what substances were found in the analysis of hair samples, we are also going to allow people to have access to information about the substances that were found, and in case they want to have counseling or more information, our collaborators like Cosmic Air in Portugal, but also the Project Noi Travel, that is the drug checking service in Italy, and the French drug checking service will allow this for the participants. So I really believe that this collaboration between drug checking services or NGOs, it's key, and we also, this is my request also, we need also labs and institutions that have the skills and the possibility to analyze biological samples to team up at national level so that we can have better information. And to finalize, I think this will also close a bit also the gap and contribute to the emerging body of research that can be done with and for the drug checking services, and also try to give more answers to the criticism that sometimes drug checking services still face with the lack of evidence, which for me I think it's a bit unfair because I just think it reflects different expectations of what the services are supposed to do. And I think this project will actually fit in between humanism and science, so it will work with people, for people, and at the same time provide data. And I just wanted to really thank Danielle here from Cosmic Care because of the constant brainstorms around this project. It has been super useful. So thank you.
Thank you, João. So I think we'll have some time also for questions at the end. And now we're going to quickly pass the floor to Dr. Mário Dias. Dr. Mário Dias is going to present in Portuguese, but if any doubts arise for our foreign invitations, I can help also with the translation or anything that you need. So... O Dr. Mário Dias é assessor de Medicina Legal Principal no Instituto Nacional de Medicina Legal e Ciências Forenses, é diretor do Serviço de Química e Toxicologia Forense do IMNL CF entre 2002 e 2014, é professor convidado do Instituto Universitário Egas Muniz desde 2013 e é coordenador de projetos de investigação e representante de Portugal em comissões e grupos de trabalho nacionais e internacionais na área das ciências forenses. Nomeadamente, é representante do Ponto Focal Nacional da rede RayTox desde 2008, no Observatório Europeu das Drogas, é representante do Ponto Focal Nacional da rede RayTox desde 2015, no International Informal Scientific Network do UNODC, é coordenador no INML-CF do projeto europeu Identification and Assessment of New Psychoactive Substance, a European Network, entre os anos de 2016 e 2018, e é também representante no INML-CF em 2013, no grupo de trabalho no âmbito da portaria 154/2013, 17 de abril, com o regulamento que criou, o regulamento português para as novas substâncias psicoativas. E, portanto, é um grande privilégio o Dr. Mário Dias estar aqui connosco e ter arranjado tempo, apesar de estar fora, para partilhar connosco também esta experiência. E agradecer-lhe mais uma vez também todo o apoio que tem dado à Cosmic Care e tem sido também uma pessoa aqui fundamental no desenvolvimento do nosso serviço de drug checking. E por isso passava-lhe, sem mais delongas, a palavra. Connosco também esta experiência e agradecer mais uma vez também todo o apoio que tem dado à Cosmic Care e tem sido também uma pessoa aqui fundamental no desenvolvimento do nosso serviço de drug checking e por isso passava-lhe, sem mais delongas, a palavra.
Muito obrigado, Helena, pelas suas palavras e também obrigado pelo convite que me fizeram para participar e poder dar o meu contributo sobre esta questão dos indicadores de consumo. Posso partilhar o ecrã?
Penso que sim. Tiago, pode... Sim.
Posso partilhar o ecrã?
Pode, não me está a ouvir, pois não?
Não tenho som.
Pois não.
Eu deixei de ter...
Sim, Tiago. Sim.
Eu estou a ouvir através do telemóvel, portanto vou...
Pode, não me está a ouvir, pois não?
Agora estou a ouvir através do telemóvel, mas há aqui um delay no timing.
A tecnologia nunca desaponta, nunca estamos aqui a dizer que é muito importante. Sim.
Eu estou a ouvir através do telemóvel, portanto agora estou a ouvir através do telemóvel, mas há aqui um delay no timing. Posso...
A tecnologia nunca desaponta, nunca estamos aqui a dizer que é muito importante.
Bom, mas é que eu vou fazer a apresentação, mesmo que não tendo som diretamente a partir do Zoom, mas pronto, vamos esperar que no fundo a ideia e a mensagem passe, mesmo que com o delay que pode acontecer. Eu estava dizendo que, e agradecendo as palavras da Milena, também agradecer ao Daniel o convite e dizer que é com prazer que estou a participar nesta reunião. Aquilo que eu vou tentar deixar aqui, muito breve, tem a ver com, no fundo, bem reforçar aquilo que foi dito pelos anteriores palestrantes e que tem a ver com a importância da partilha de informação e com a importância da ligação entre diferentes instituições que, no fundo, procurando juntar o melhor que cada uma delas tem, podemos realmente alcançar alguns objetivos. No caso dos indicadores de consumo, portanto, são vários, mas aqueles para os quais existe uma relação direta com a importância que as análises toxicológicas podem ter, estão as drogas relacionadas mortes relacionadas com droga, estão as drogas e a condução, estão os dados recolhidos em emergências hospitalares, estão as análises em águas residuais e estão o drug checking. Portanto, qualquer um destes indicadores são indicadores para os quais as análises toxicológicas são efetivamente importantes. Ao longo dos últimos anos, Portugal tem conseguido, apesar das suas dificuldades, mas de certa forma numa perspectiva de colaboração e de procurar realmente acompanhar aquilo que se faz nesta área da monitorização das drogas, e neste caso desde 2008 que para todos estes indicadores nós damos a nossa contribuição. No caso das drogas relacionadas com drogas e no caso das drogas na condução, desde 2008 que o Instituto Nacional de Medicina Legal portanto, fornece informação, quer ao CICAD, quer à NSR, enquanto observatórios na área das drogas e na área da segurança rodoviária, para, no fundo, com os dados necessários aos seus relatórios anuais. Em 2014, desde 2014 participamos também no projeto SCORE, portanto analisando águas residuais das estações recolhidas nas estações das hectares de Alcântara em Lisboa e de Almada e na hectare de Almada e na hectare de Mutela em Almada. Em 2014, no âmbito de um projeto europeu, fizemos análises de amostras de urinas de doentes admitidos nos serviços de urgência de vários hospitais a nível nacional, e relativamente ao drug checking, desde 2020, na sequência do protocolo que a Cosmiquério estabeleceu com o Laboratório de Ciências Forenses e Psicológicas Egas Muniz, estamos também, portanto, a dar a nossa colaboração na área do drug checking. Gostaríamos, portanto, não foi até agora possível que o Instituto Nacional de Medicina Legal e Ciências Forenses estivesse também envolvido nesta área, mas seria importante pelo know-how e pelo potencial humano e técnico que tem, mas esperamos que no futuro isso possa vir a acontecer. Focando um pouco melhor aquilo que cada um destes indicadores e aquilo que é a realidade portuguesa, relativamente às mortes relacionadas com droga, naquilo que se chama os registros especiais, ou Special Mortality Registers, desde 2008 que Portugal, no fundo, elabora estas estatísticas anuais de acordo com o protocolo do Observatório e também de acordo com protocolos analíticos adequados também daquilo que são as melhores práticas para a análise destas análises toxicológicas pós-mortem. E, portanto, isso tem permitido, portanto, a Portugal cumprir esse princípio e a qualidade desses dados que obtemos. Relativamente às drogas e condução, também fazemos, portanto, o Instituto, nomeadamente o Serviço de Toxicologia do Instituto Nacional de Medicina Legal e Ciências Forenses, é responsável por todas as análises que se fazem a nível nacional relativamente a amostras biológicas, portanto, amostras de sangue para pesquisa de álcool e de substâncias psicotrópicas, e, portanto, isso permite-nos, uma vez que somos o único laboratório que faz esse tipo de avaliação, permite-nos alguma comparabilidade de resultados. E uma das coisas, a título de exemplo, que se pode verificar aqui é que, por exemplo, a concentração média de THC nas amostras de sangue de condutores envolvidos em acidentes graves e que revelaram a presença desta substância, portanto, do THC, o princípio ativo, podemos verificar que entre 2016 e 2021 há um incremento da concentração média de THC presente nesses controlos. Isto, no fundo, está um pouco em linha também com aquilo que se sabe ser a tendência do aumento do teor de concentração de THC na cannabis que é consumida e, portanto, e que também tem vindo a aumentar ao longo dos últimos anos esses teores de THC. Portanto, é um exemplo de que é um outro indicador, mas que, no fundo, neste caso, tem alguma coincidência, ou, portanto, mostra uma tendência semelhante àquela que se verifica realmente também em relação ao consumo de cannabis e, portanto, aos produtos e aos teores de cannabis. Relativamente às águas residuais, como referi, desde 2014 fazemos essas análises a nível da hectare de Alcântara e a nível da hectare de Almada, portanto permite-nos manter também uma leitura sobre aquilo que é a tendência verificada, portanto, em cada ano, relativamente às substâncias que estão incluídas neste projeto SCORE, e também, curiosamente, em 2017 fizemos um estudo conjuntamente com o CICAD, que se apresentou no encontro do Addictions de 2017, em que, curiosamente, aquilo que foram os cálculos de consumo de metadona feitos a partir dos dados do CICAD relativamente àquilo que é a dispensa de metadona nos programas de manutenção com metadona nas regiões urbanas de Lisboa e de Amadora e Oeiras, que estão abrangidas pela hectare de Alcântara, relativamente às águas residuais, e curiosamente os cálculos feitos para o consumo na população, feito com os dados do CICAD e feitos com os valores obtidos, a extrapolação feita a partir dos valores obtidos na água, os valores foram muito semelhantes, o que comprova que, de facto, estes valores ou esta monitorização através das águas residuais poderia ser e pode ser um aspecto importante. Relativamente aos dados hospitalares, também tivemos uma experiência em 2014 e que, no fundo, permitiu verificar que os hospitais se mostraram disponíveis, colaboraram e conseguimos fazer, portanto, uma colheita ao longo do ano de cerca de 2.500 amostras em vários serviços de urgência de diferentes hospitais, e aquilo que se verifica é que, quando comparamos as prevalências de positividade para drogas feito através das análises que nós efetuamos, porque obviamente as fazemos com tecnologia que nos permite não só pesquisar o maior número de substâncias com limites de detecção muito mais eficazes, isso permitiu-nos, de facto, ter uma prevalência sobre o consumo de drogas nessa população muito superior àqueles que seria dado apenas com os rastreios para drogas feitos com a metodologia que existem nos hospitais. Portanto, estamos a falar de prevalências completamente diferentes, olhando para as mesmas amostras, conforme sejam analisadas, obviamente, por rastreios feitos em laboratório de patologia hospitalar ou feito num laboratório com análises toxicológicas forenses e, portanto, dispondo de equipamentos com outro tipo de capacidade. E isto depois tem implicações também na quantidade e na diversidade de substâncias que podemos, no fundo, identificar para caracterizar essas amostras. E, portanto, neste caso é um exemplo claro também de que esta informação que possa vir dos hospitais é também um indicador mais realista daquilo que possa ser a realidade do consumo e de diversidade de substâncias. Por último, mas não menos importante, o drug checking, que embora tenha uma história mais recente, mas que também, a partir da colaboração entre o Laboratório de Ciências Forenses e Psicológicas da Junis e a Cosmic Care, e que se tem vindo a desenvolver e esperamos que venha a evoluir. Portanto, temos feito realmente essa detecção e identificação de adulterantes e das substâncias presentes nas amostras que a Cosmic Care nos envia, e também já temos tido alguns casos em que, portanto, se foi necessário proceder a análises mais aprofundadas relativamente à tentativa de identificação de novas substâncias, por aparentemente aquilo que visualizávamos nos parecer ser uma substância diferente e, portanto, nova, e por isso mesmo o recurso a tecnologias de identificação estrutural mais potentes. E, no fundo, o que é que eu quero dizer para terminar? É que as possibilidades são muitas, ou seja, nós temos conhecimento, temos universidades, temos laboratórios, temos especialistas, temos recursos técnicos que permitem, no fundo, como penso eu ter demonstrado aqui, conseguir chegar a todas estas diferentes indicadores e a todas estas diferentes áreas. Quais são as dificuldades? As dificuldades são muitas vezes na capacidade que há de nós conseguirmos que as organizações tenham a ligação suficientemente forte para realmente, em conjunto, criarem estruturas e planos de intervenção para que, no fundo, esta informação que possa estar um pouco dispersa possa ser devidamente integrada e, ao ser integrada, possa dela se tirar, de facto, aquilo que importa e aquilo que é possível fazer e dar, no fundo, suporte a medidas legislativas e outras de preventivas para realmente acompanhar este problema do consumo de drogas. Portanto, no fundo, chamar a atenção de facto que o potencial existe, provavelmente aquilo que falta é realmente encontrar a forma certa de agregar essas capacidades, de forma a tirar partido desse potencial que de facto existe e que eu acho que, com aquilo que procurei mostrar, significa que nós conseguimos chegar a todas essas áreas. Portanto, é tudo uma questão de nos conseguirmos realmente organizar e levar a bom porto todas essas questões. Muito obrigado e desculpem este delay, mas da Corunha a Lisboa, pelos vistos, pelo menos 30 segundos nós demoramos.
Queria agradecer mais uma vez ao Dr. Mário Dias pelo bom sumário também que nos fez aqui das diferentes formas de monitorização que temos no nosso país.
And now organizar e levar a bom porto todas essas questões. Muito obrigado e desculpem este delay, mas da Corunha a Lisboa, pelos vistos, pelo menos 30 segundos nós demoramos.
That's a bit of a psychedelic experience.
Mais uma vez ao Dr. Mário Dias.
And I realize I have a much stronger accent on Zoom than on real life. I don't know why. My Porto accent is very strong on Zoom, but I don't hear it. So we are quite delayed at the moment, already half an hour. We've started a little bit late. So I understand these are very interesting areas, but for now I would ask if someone wants to make a comment or a question, just one, and then after the coffee break and we rest a little bit, and depending on how the sessions go, we can see if there's more time for discussion, or you can take the time for some networking outside. So I would just ask if someone wants to pose a question or a final remark. No, I think everyone's already very tired. So we had a half an hour coffee break. We're running a little bit late, so I would ask you if you could maybe do, 20 minutes, 15, to make sure that we can all respect the time afterwards and we don't take too much of your time. Thank you again. So thank you all again for coming. I hope you had a nice coffee break and that now you have more energy to pursue with our debate. Our next speakers are Mar Cunha from Cosmic Air. Mar is a master in pharmaceutical science. They have been working in harm reduction since 2017. In 2018, they started working with Cosmic Air, running the first permanent drug checking laboratory in Lisbon. With a background in neuroscience research and a great interest in psychopharmacology, they fight to promote accessibility in scientific and health information doing science, communication, and content production. Mar also works closely with the LGBTQ+ community, striving to increase access to healthcare services, organizing workshops on harm reduction and queer care. They recently co-authored a scientific article about chemsex in Lisbon, a book chapter about drug checking, and collaborated on a zine about hormone replacement therapy and trans care. Through Cosmic Care, they collaborate with several international harm reduction and drug checking projects and network, and Mar will be talking a little bit more about the Cosmic Care drug checking service and how we went from on-site service on festivals to having our permanent site and now working with people in more vulnerable situations in Lisbon. So thank you, Mar.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So today I'll talk a bit about the progress in Cosmic Air drug checking service, from having a laboratory in a festival in the middle of the field to having an intervention in the city of Lisbon. Okay. Just a brief, let me just take this off the way. Oops, okay, whatever. So just a brief overview of all the techniques that we use. We have colorimetric reagents, which is a very basic preliminary test. We also have thin layer chromatography, which is a technique that allows the separation of the different components in a mixture. Also spectrophotometry UV visible for quantification, and more recently FTIR, and also GCMS through our partnership with Laboratório de Ciências Forenses e Criminais Egas Muniz. So, in Cosmic Air began having a drug checking service in festivals, where the drug checking service was integrated with other services like the info stands and the PsyCare. And this started in 2006. In the beginning, we were only using thin layer chromatography, aided by colorimetric reagents, because these are very simple techniques that are able to be used literally in the middle of the field in a festival, in a portable laboratory. And these techniques are quite simple, but they are perfectly able to identify the most common substances that we found. But with time and with the trends in drugs market for like high-dose MDMA pills, it became apparent that we had also to adapt our techniques. So we also started using a quantification method, and this allowed us to quantify MDMA pills, because we were seeing these trends in Europe and in the world of pure MDMA pills, but with very, very high dosages, as my colleagues mentioned before. Also, this quantification also allows us to quantify substances that are active in very low amounts that cannot be seen by eye, like 2CB and LSD. So this brings a great harm reduction benefit for users and for the drug checking service. So in 2006, Cosmic Air was doing TLC and colorimetrics in festivals, and from 2018 on, we also had this quantification method. Here you can see a picture of us working in 2018 in Boom Festival, and we already have all these techniques inside a portable laboratory. So a great benefit of these techniques is all of them can be used in these contexts in a portable laboratory. Then, in November of 2019, Cosmic Air opened the first drop-in center. And this place is open for the public. People can come, they can talk to us. They can access harm reduction services and also the drug checking that we run weekly. We do the sample collections every Tuesday and Wednesday, and the results are delivered on the same Friday, so 2 days after. This was a big change in the way we operated the drug checking service, because in festivals you have 2 hours until people come back for the results. And this presents different opportunities, of course. Like if you have more time to give the substance, you can also run more tests. And at the same time, the context you are intervening has different substances. Because it's not a festival, people are delivering different substances, and yeah. So it was also an opportunity for us to implement a partnership with Laboratório de Ciências Forenses e Psicológicas Egas Muniz, that allowed us to access these like high-end gold standards in forensic sciences equipment called GCMS. this is a very, very expensive equipment. It's not possible for like smaller organizations to have one of these equipments by their own, and also not to transport them to festivals. This is like very big, requires a lot of logistics, but it's really, really good at separating and identifying substances. And this allowed us also to see like what we were seeing with our methods and what the substances actually contained. So this was very good, and it gave us a lot of safety and confidence in our results. And we usually now what we're doing is when we have doubts on the identification of some substance, or if we find a new psychoactive substance like this super niche molecule, a new drug, we also send them to them so we can identify it properly and then emit the proper alerts. And then more recently, in 2021, we started also intervening with RIGHT projects, with people who use drugs in contexts of greater vulnerability. And this also presented new challenges in adapting the drug checking methods we were using. If in the drop-in, people can come and they can wait 2 days for the results, and we cannot do all these techniques, and if we need more time to do more analysis, it's usually fine, and people are super fine with it. In this context, we have a van that goes to the places where people are, and we test the substances there. So we need to have super fast results. We don't have 2 days. We have to give them in the moment. And also, it's good that the substance is not destroyed, because this would be a difficulty for people to adhere to the service. So we started using a new equipment, FTIR. And this machine is basically the size of a printer. It's super portable, and it's highly powerful detecting different substances. So we are really able to put it in a van and take it to places, just plug it to a connection. And yeah, it has a great power at identifying different substances. So this is what we've been using. So right now, we have TLC, colorimetrics, and UV for quantification, GCMS through our partnership, and also FTIR. And we are combining all these techniques, and we use them, basically adapting them to the different contexts we are intervening and to the different substances we are analyzing to provide like the best results we can. Yeah, and also with the RIGHT project, we are also able to collect caps, like consumption materials after people have used the drugs, and we send them to GCMS. So they can be thoroughly analyzed, and we can have this market monitorization of what is circulating. Because also with these consumption materials, it's like the remainers of what people used, so we have more time to analyze it, and it's a great input regarding market monitorization to know what is circulating in the city and to be able to be sure that we detect every single substance present in that sample. So with the results we obtain, when we find like dangerous substances circulating, either an adulteration or like for instance a very high MDMA pill or things like this, we emit quick alerts in social media for the people who follow Cosmica's work can know that this is circulating in Lisbon right now. We also disseminate it through our partner networks. And we also do like bi-monthly short reports in social media as an accessible way to communicate with people, because especially with COVID, our intervention became a bit more like digital. And this is a good way of like quickly communicating results in an engaging way and still passing the harm reduction tips associated with it. We also do yearly complete reports on all our results, and these reports are more thorough, more scientific, like with all the information required. You can find them in our website, and you can see the results in detail there. Just briefly, because we are a bit short on time, this is an overview of the substances that were delivered in our drug checking service last year. This is categorized by expectation of the user, so what people thought it contained. As you can see, like the most common substance is MDMA, cocaine, and LSD. This graph just shows us the relationship between what people thought the substance contained and what it actually contained. So we can see there are very different Yeah. Yeah, you can see that cocaine, for instance, is usually adulterated from what you see in our service. Amphetamine too. But for instance, MDMA, most of the time, the only active substance we detect is MDMA. But the problem is a different one. It's the high dose MDMA pills that we were talking about. That you can see here. So just so you have a quick notion, this is the maximum dose that is recommended per session or per night, and this is the medium dose of analyzed pills that we did. So yeah, this is really, really high. And some of the pills contain 3 to 4 times the dose that a person with certain weight and a certain body constitution should take for one night. So this really highlights the importance of having these quantification methods and to do this result communication properly so people can adjust and take harm reduction techniques. We also found synthetic catenones being sold as MDMA, circulating in Lisbon early this year. And this was a great example of why it's so important to mix all these different techniques. Only with TLC and colorimetrics, we could tell for sure that it was not MDMA, and it was likely a catenone. Catenones are substances that are stimulant, and they have a higher risk profile than MDMA, especially when people think they are consuming something and expecting for those effects, and then they don't. And this was only possible to identify properly using the FTIR and GCMS, because only with TLC you could know for sure this was not MDMA, but you could not tell them apart, because as you can see, all of them are very, very structurally similar. So, as a last message, drug checking contributes to market monitorization, and it helps society to reframe the interventions. So the input that we get from drug checking services contributes to knowing what's circulating on the market. And it's also a retroactive feedback. By knowing what's on the market, we can also adapt our drug checking services to better be able to keep up with these trends and develop new techniques to identify them. But of course, this adaptation of our methods is super dependent on budgets and all the capacities and these social limitations of our intervention, being in a festival, being in a permanent drop-in, etc. So all of this has to be taken in consideration to be able to provide the best results. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mar, for your input. I think it was very illustrative of what we've been doing in Cosmic Care the past few years. I just wanted to leave a few notes on what you said. I think it's a bit my paper to be the annoying one with some of the stuff regarding also the funding. I would like to highlight for the FTIR the collaboration of CICAD and the special opportunity that we had to acquire the machine thanks to the extra COVID-19 support. That wouldn't have been possible the other way around. And concerning the RIDE project and this new project that we're implementing along with our partners from the Safe Consumption Rooms, many of which are here. So we thank them for that, and also the RIDE team, Inez and Nadia, that's been working a lot so that a different type of people that use drugs can also understand the importance of this type of services. But this is a pilot project. It just now began collecting samples, and it will be over in September. And right now we don't have any funding perspectives for the project, but it's the first opportunity that we have to actually using drug checking service to characterize the heroin and the base cocaine market in the city of Lisbon. And I think that will be very important to understand what's happening and have a panoramic of the city. So we're going to keep working, collecting in different sites, and eventually I hope that we produce information that shows the relevance of also offering this service to people that are in more vulnerable contexts and situations, and not only in party settings. It's a big challenge, but I think it's one that we should take as soon as we're implemented, and I think it would be ashamed if after September we wouldn't have the opportunity to proceed with what we're doing and with people that probably need it the most. So I would just want to leave this this little note, and I would pass the floor to João. João Taborda da Gama is a lawyer and an academic. He's a founding partner of Gama Gloria, a law firm that is based in Lisbon, a senior advisor of the Albright Stonebridge Group in Washington, D.C., and he teaches at the Catholic University Law School in Portugal. João is a member of the scientific committee of the Future Forum of the Gulbenkian Foundation. He advises governments, patients, NGOs, and global companies on the regulation of use, production, and trade of controlled substances in medical, religious, spiritual, and recreational contexts. João also acts as a counsel to the global organizations advocating for harm reduction and the responsible adult use of cannabis, psychedelics, and entheogen plants. He just recently published The Regulation of Medical Cannabis in Portugal and Regulate and Protect Towards a New Drug Policy. João sits on the Business Ethics Committee at the Portugal Pharma Association and has served as a political advisor to the President of Portugal and was also a member of the Portuguese government. So thanks, João, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Elena. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and share some thoughts on the legal framework of drug checking, and what I was asked to do is to see what's happening, what's good, and what could be better, and where can we go from here. So using your terminology, I'll start with a very basic analysis. Then I'll try to go deeper into what's happening and what can be done. And at the end of my presentation, I'll share 2 or 3 thoughts on the future of the regulation of drug checking and the challenges ahead. So what we have, and of course this is my personal opinion, it's not the opinion of any entities or anyone, is that drug checking services, they stem from a positive human rights obligation and right related to the right to health. And that's from where all harm reduction stems, and drug checking is an essential component of harm reduction. So drug checking services are totally in accordance with the international drug control mechanisms, which in the beginning was discussed. Now it's being more generally accepted all over the world. Even conservative entities such as the INCB have never said recently that drug checking services or pill testing are against the international framework of drug control. Well, inside the United Nations, as you all know, the United Nations doesn't speak at one voice. There are more conservative bodies like the UNODC, which sometimes still is against harm reduction in general and therefore also against drug checking services. Drug checking services do not derive from a basic transposition of the international treaties, so some kind or some type of domestic legislation is always needed, and that's important, but that domestic legislation should always be interpreted as being a concretization of the human right to health, which is normally, typically in every country, a constitutional right, a right of constitutional basis. And this is important in terms of interpreting laws, because when I'm interpreting a law that is a concretization of such a fundamental human right or constitutional right, that has an effect on how the way I interpret and apply words. So for instance, when we go to the sparse Portuguese legislation of drug checking and we read the word equipment, of course that equipment must be interpreted as all types of equipment and materials and reagents and analytic patterns that are needed to perform drug checking services, and because this stems from a broader clause of the right to health. So there's an extensive interpretation obligation to all the judges, prosecutors, police, public authorities, and all of us in general. And the fourth element is that drug checking services and the regulation that regulates drug checking services, because it is to apply a right to health through harm reduction, must be adequate and proportional to the setting of real-world drug use. It's not a law to be drafted in a lab or to be drafted from people that don't know what people who use drugs are doing and what substances are being used. It has to stem from the bottom to the legislator to answer the real-world questions. So, and this will be important ahead in my presentation. I would say, what are the macro challenges of drug checking regulation? So what we all want with drug checking services is to always improve access and quality, I would say. Quality including safety and including efficacy of the methods, and access, how do we bring drug checking services to wherever they are needed, irrespective of class, gender, where people are, the setting. And this is the challenge of public policy in general. Of course, it's always also the challenge of drug checking. So, and why is this difficult, and how legislation can and cannot respond to that? Well, first, it's difficult because drug checking is at what I can call the counterintuitive core of something that's already counterintuitive. Drug policy in general, humanist and pragmatic drug policy is counterintuitive, and drug checking is the counterintuitive core of that counterintuitive area, which means if someone can understand why someone that uses a needle needs a clean needle, it's less intuitive to understand why people that go on festivals may want to have their pills tested. We all know this, that's your daily day-to-day, but we must never forget that there are levels of difficulty when speaking to a median stakeholder, to a median regulator, to the average person on the street. And then, because of this, or not because of this, I don't know the cause, but what from my work with drug checking in Lisbon, what I see and from what I read is that drug checking is typically underfunded in an area that is already underfunded, with drug addiction policies, drug addiction funding, and then harm reduction, and then drug checking. So these are the challenges. These challenges are answered only partially by law and by regulation. And then we have micro challenges that probably you have addressed today. Some of them I know you have. I've listened online to the first part of this seminar. And I would say that there are two main problems, or two main questions. I wouldn't call them problems, but two main questions. One is moving substances around. It's transport of substance. How do I bring the analytic patterns in and out the lab? How can I move samples between labs, or between a lab or a better lab or a different lab, or if I have a problem in my equipment? So that's one area, moving substance around between partners. Even inside one country, this becomes, of course, much more complicated if we have a geographical political border, because then we have more control and more problems, and